Warning, in this game, the cat gets hurt. This game also has some imagery of blood, cosmic body horror, and vandalism. But it also shows a sleepy Caesar. And we do love a sleepy Caesar. This is the story and lore of... Now, in the last video, we started with the lore of the game, but in this one, we need to start out with how I found the lore of the game. And that's because it's not like SCORN, where there are no specific dates, and I can just look at the art and level design and go, oh, this means this, that means that, I'm a human, and I'm coming. In this game, there are a lot of specific dates, but most of them outright contradict each other. On top of that, there are all these signs on the wall, and while some of them follow an alphabet, most of them don't. I made a cipher on paper and I translated this into OK bar and then realized just about everything else was made through random keyboard smashing. So in summary, I gave up on the dream that one of these signs would say, "It is year 2700. The machines are alive." And I tried an alternative method, where I would use specific dates written in documents or said by the in-game characters to try to figure out what specific year the game at least takes place in. And this, honestly, was a whole rabbit hole that I tumbled down. For a full week, I was charting the amount of hours the days are stretched by the moon, when the sun explodes, the material breakdown rates of steel, and so on and so forth. It was a mess. And then my script was more than 40 pages long. So I'm cutting all of that from the video. If you want a specific explanation of some of the math, or why I discounted certain theories, or why I'm not talking about the clocks in Midtown, look in the description. I explain all of that there, or leave a comment and I will respond to it as soon as I can. In brief summary, I use a date on B12's diploma and Ronan's age for the earliest possible year that it could be. Then, because the sign at Jacob's Bar tells us that the date is ending in 27, I skipped ahead to the first date ending in 27. And that leaves us at 2627. 2627 does not give us enough time to explain the events we see during the game. But if we add another 100 or so years to it, and then we get 2727, not only do we have a really neat year number, but it actually gives us enough time to explain everything. It's a bit narrow. 2827 is just as good, but with the weathering we see on those little boxes at the end of the game, anytime after that doesn't make sense. Anytime before 2027 is just ridiculous. And that gives us the date of the game, October 11th, 2727. And with that timeline out of the way, we can finally talk about the lore of Stray. Even with our earliest specific date, we have to go back just a bit further to the pre-timeline events of the game, and there are a few. Firstly, the game is taking place on Earth. We know that because that is Earth's moon, and multiple apocalypses in this game have hit Earth. We don't know specifically what they were, the game never tells us. At some point, we know there was a plague, and at some point, we know there was a trash problem. Online theories have sometimes said it's a Wall-E situation. Some of us have been, nah, it's the Last of Us situation. I, however, being an independent thinker, believe that all of them happened, because that is the only way to explain the events we see in the game in our current timeline. Allow me to explain. First, there was some kind of ecological disaster, a Wall-E style apocalypse. The humans of the time didn't think that they'd be able to survive it, and so they began building the walled cities to act as some kind of multi-generational shelter, while the Earth slowly restabilized into livable surface conditions. This was both built by the humans and a type of robot, which the game refers to as companions. That seems to be a sort of a branded name for any robot assistant made by the company B12 Robotics, and we know that's the company because of the box B12 came in. We don't know how the other walled cities are designed, but we know from Momo's research that number 99 is about 450 meters in diameter. Now, the game doesn't outright say this, but I believe there was no tearing hurry to get people into the walled cities. Whatever apocalypse it was that led to them building the things, it was slowly encroaching, but people also didn't believe that it could be stopped. And then it was stopped. This is the only timeline where the Zerks make any sort of sense at all. Some line of bacteria was artificially designed to consume the trash that was off-gassing some kind of dangerous greenhouse gas. So mostly it was designed to eat natural waste products and the plastic bags holding them so they could more quickly get to them and break them down. Now, this bacterial line was modified to form very dense and strong biofilm plaques, which look somewhat fleshy-like, probably as a means of protecting itself from these dangerous chemicals and things that it was eating. This actually worked. For a while, there was no longer a critically dangerous situation, so people weren't in a huge rush to get into and seal off all the walled cities. They still lived in them, and they had still fully built them, so they could seal them off if they needed to. They were building towers and skyscrapers and whatnot in them as well, but they could enter and leave as they pleased. And this is supported by the signage in the control room, and the company that designed this bacteria was Neko Corporation. This is how they got their insane level of power and influence. If we assume that the bacteria could only survive if it was deployed properly in some specific way, then that would give this corporation a complete monopoly on the distribution of the thing that everybody on the planet at this point needed in order to have a survivable home. They could just name their price and make billions. Things slowly changed for a while after this in the pre-timeline history of the game. The cities were in communication with each other and the rest of the world. A university specializing in some kind of medical and scientific study came to be built inside Walled City 99. Neko Corp during this time consolidated its power, using its considerable wealth to effectively buy all the governing positions and control the police of Walled City 99, until the city itself was basically just corporate land. We don't know if Neko did this for all the walled cities or if just for number 99, but they were essentially at peak power during this time. But then the bacteria mutated and it targeted humans. Here's a fun science fact for you. Bacteria that can form strong biofilms and infect humans are almost always more dangerous and infectious than bacteria that can't. Like, biofilms are a huge part of why cholera and TB are as dangerous and transmissible as they are, and why they're so resistant to antibiotics. So this mutant bacteria that was designed to survive in these crazy hostile situations, that could form a dense biofilm and survive any antibiotics or whatever chemicals was released onto them, yeah, that shit would be like the Black Death times 100. There was no real treatment for it at the time, and ridiculously quickly people started dying out. So the walled cities very abruptly started bringing people in and sealing themselves off. And now it's important to note that they were not ready for this. It's a completely different game to support a city of people when you have a constant inflow of food and trade versus keeping a sealed system alive and thriving. But the city was sealed, and the plague was outside. We know at this point that the scientist who would one day be known as B12 was in fact alive, so we're just before the timeline now. And we know this because at one point he says that he went outside of the city, which must have been prior to the new apocalypse, before everything fell apart. And sometime later, he attended and graduated from Walled City International University at Walled City 99 from their Functional Science and Technology Institute, as per his diploma. And around this time, he would have met his wife and Neko Corp due to either the extreme shortage of resources and electricity, or due to how unstable their power hold had become in such uncertain times, began to behave much more brutally. They started acting like a totalitarian regime. They sealed off the elevators between the slums and Midtown, and they started selectively treating the people of Midtown much better, which further emphasized the class divide between the two areas. The idea for Neko Corp was to keep Midtown's people so happy that they would defend them if things had to come down to that, and to keep the people of the slums so destitute that it made it very difficult for them to rise up or act against them. And by having a strong automated police force consolidated in this one dense area, which had complete control over the distribution of electricity and water, and with very limited access between the slums and Midtown, this made revolution nearly impossible. But there was a problem though. WIC 99 didn't have any way to handle their trash, so people from Midtown just started chucking their garbage over the edge of the wall and down into the slums. And if you know anything about garbage, you know that shit piles up real quickly and it starts off-gassing very fast. It was already starting to become a problem after no time at all, especially because of this sealed environment, and the ability to control resources was failing because someone had managed to get access to the network and found schematics of the water containment systems. And somehow, the people of the slums managed to get into the sewers and to the water tanks and had damaged them so they could siphon off water and drink it past what they were allowed. Their crown was slipping, and things had never been so dangerous. And so, to try to control the growing animosity between the two groups, Neko released a modified version of the bacteria. This one also was designed to break down trash. However, it wouldn't attack humans, and they could make sure that it wouldn't evolve to attack humans because they created a genetically modified creature to carry the bacteria and selectively go after the garbage. The creature would break the garbage apart, eat it, and the bacteria would break it down. And this creature, with the bacteria, was essentially the harmless precursor to the Zerks. So these proto-Zerks, as I'm calling them, started eating the garbage, the bacteria started forming some plaques over it, breaking it down, and they started laying eggs. However, despite that, the people of the slums still didn't care about the rules Neko had in place on them. The automated police was sent out to limit this, but it was only strong enough to control a very small area like Midtown. It couldn't do anything to the sprawling slums, especially now that there were thousands upon thousands of people doing this. Now, all this happened over a roughly 25-year period after they closed up the walled city. And then, one of three things happened. Either some bacteria from the outside got into the inside, and since bacteria can share genetic information, they did, causing a mutated bacteria to emerge and target humans as food, or it was some kind of natural evolution, or Neko Corp released a new modified creature which could form eyeballs and similar-looking bacterial growth, but would also identify humans as food. Now, this might not be the case. The bacterial plaque, maybe it just a Zerk connected to it and it made an eyeball, and now eyeball. But regardless of which path it was, we know that it led to a similarly vicious plague as to what happened outside. In a very short period of time, almost all the humans started getting very sick and dying. The Proto-Zerks still didn't consider humans food at the time, which is, in my opinion, the reason that B12 didn't know anything about them. They never would have left high trash density areas like the sewers and the trash receptacles, and B12 was very focused on, getting into the network and getting people water and stuff. So they never would have crossed, and as a result, the only thing he would know is that Neko Corp released some kind of bacteria to dissolve the trash. Anyway, somehow the eyeballs started growing in the sewers where this mutation happened, and the people started dying in mass. The sick people of the slums were relegated to a quarantine zone, which one day they would start to call the Dead City. B12 went there with his family, likely because they were already sick and he wanted to take care of them, because we know that he must have had medical knowledge given what he winds up achieving. While there, he managed to somehow keep himself from ever contracting the illness, and he started working with other people in the Dead City to organize an escape attempt. This we know because of all the signs outside his house and how protective it was. There's no way one person was able to do that, especially while caring for his sick wife and daughter, so he had to have had other people working with him. And he was absolutely determined to let his family see the outside again before they died, especially his daughter, who at this point would have never seen the sky, even once in her life. But unfortunately, it didn't work. And even worse, people in what was the safe area of the slums started getting sick, and so they tried to organize an evacuation. The elevators were still shut down, so they went through the sewers into a path that only small bodies could fit through, like, frankly, mostly children. And chances are, some people in Midtown took pity on them and helped them at least get the children out of the slums. But accidentally, they let plague carriers in. And that led to the outbreak spreading through Midtown like a wildfire, killing everyone. With the human bodies on the ground in the sewers, the curious Proto-Zerks started to interact with them, and eventually started eating them, as the bacteria was already able to decompose them into energy that the Zerks could use. They started shifting towards what would actually be called the Zerks in the game, and roughly at this time, the last of the humans died out. B12, at this point, performed his last experiment. He used technology he had harvested from the companion robots and a coffin-like device he made himself to upload his consciousness into the city's network. Even though his wife and daughter were already dead, he wanted to force open the roof in the city's walls so that anyone who was left would still have a chance. But there were a few things he didn't expect. First, any attempt to connect to the city's network will instantly fry a companion robot. Second, even if he could connect to the network, the city was hardwired into lockdown mode, so it would only allow an opening prompt to come from inside the command room. And finally, the process of putting his consciousness into the network would also kill his original body. He managed to access a small portion of the city's network before it quarantined him after his body had died, but he was only able to control cameras, lights, microphones, and some doors inside the dead city. After this, he had to watch in unsleeping silence while the last of humanity died out, and the bacteria slowly grew from their bodies into thick plaques, covering even the walls and the floor. With everything rotting, after hundreds of years, B12 had forgotten everything, and he fell asleep. A long time passed. The various lines of modified organisms and bacteria continued to experience rapid coevolution, leading to the massive eyeballs that we see in the sewer, which would signal Zerks to attack anything intruding on their nest in exchange for food and protection provided by the Zerks. And the bacterial fleshy plaques had covered everything. Even more time passed, and a companion woke up. As far as I know, we don't know which companion was the first to become sentient. We know the companions can, at least somewhat, connect to the city's network, which they describe as transcendence. It's also possible that this means fragments of B12's memories started breaking down, leading to little bits of human intellect inside the companions. I believe this is what happened, and it would explain why so many of them don't have real names like Blazer or Guardian or Grandma and so on. It would also explain a lot of their personalities and also explain why some of them are very clearly dressed like they're cosplaying from movies. Now, it might have happened randomly, just using the bulk of human information stored on the network. Maybe they just achieved some amount of sentience just by coincidence. However, the robots that weren't connected to the same network as B12 up in the command room never achieved sentience. So I'm fairly certain that it had something to do with his consciousness breaking down in there. Either way, the now sentient companions began to communicate with each other. They invented a new alphabet over what was basically still English, but because they could communicate in code and understand it perfectly, this language quickly changed into a garbled mess of machine sounds and random-looking characters. After this, over time, the companions quickly became more and more intelligent. They began reactivating some of the damaged or powered-down companions and raising them as their children. This is why we have multiple generations of companions in some areas, such as Doc, with a son that looks like Marty from Back to the Future, but is called Seamus and sounds like this. Oh, Dad! I know that their accent's holding this in my mind, but I wish there was like a moment where Doc was like, why does my son sound like he's from the ocean? They lived pretty happily for a while, and still held a strong fondness for humanity. After some number of years, though, the bacteria became able to target metal, and the Zerks began seeking sources of metal to break apart and bring back to the nest. This means we now had the Zerks that we see in the game, and they were targeting the companions. This led to them quickly running from the dead city and to the former, and now once again, quarantine zone inside the slums. Many, in fact, did not make it, and some never had a chance to escape at all. They were trapped inside their homes, watching everything unfold from their windows. And this led to the outsiders. First, there was Clementine, who... Okay, look. I know I'm really pushing this theory, and it can't really be confirmed, but this whole series is just me world-building and making a story out of the background of the game when there usually isn't one. But, as Clementine is one of the most intelligent robots in the game, clearly inspiring a ton of the ones that she comes across, and leading others, and she's strong, and confident, and wise, and has a real name, unlike fucking Seamus. It's my theory that Clementine's initial personality was based on B12's memories of his daughter. Clementine came up with the idea that they could leave WIC 99, and she started telling it to the other outsiders in the area. Baltazar, the, yogi, and Doc, the scientist/librarian/cosplayer, were the first to join. They started working together to try to find a way out of the city, and Baltazar and Clem were trying to find an escape route from the slums. Momo joined sometime after that, and he studied the properties of the city. He created an estimated map of how big the city was and its rough layout, but he was really more of a fan of the movement. He liked the idea of freedom, but as Clementine noticed, he lacked the courage to commit any action beyond designing some of their equipment. Eventually, Doc disappeared. He left to test out his anti-Zerk weapon after discovering that they had a weakness to high-intensity and high-energy light, like UV light. The transceiver then went down, and he was never heard from again. Clementine shifted her focus to developing a method to fix the transceiver, while Momo designed the actual device to attach and fix it so they could get back in touch with Doc and find out what happened. Balthazar, meanwhile, found an escape route, and Clem decided to follow him, and the two left the slums. Now, I'm pretty sure at this point, Momo was very early on in designing the prototype to fix the transmitter, and Clementine was intending to come back. And that's why Clem never gave Momo her notes about how to fix the transmitter. Anyways, the two of them left through the sewers, which is basically Zerk capital of the world. They managed to get into the ant village, but they couldn't really get back or tell Momo what happened. He didn't even know that the transceiver repair was figured out. As Balthazar decided to stay at Ant Village, he acted as a mediator between them and Midtown, while also monitoring for any communications from Momo. Meanwhile, Clem went on to Midtown to try to find an escape. Because trying to escape was still super illegal by the laws NATO Corp had programmed into the police bots, and I guess for doing some other stuff as well, she became wanted and had to go into hiding. Around this time, Balthazar started doing his transcendent meditation. But even with all these hats, he never stopped watching that transceiver to see if Momo fixed the transmitter and if they were able to communicate. But Momo never fixed it. He gave up on the idea that escape was even possible, and he assumed all the other outsiders had been killed. And finally, on the surface, a rainstorm hit. The date is October 11th, 2727, and it is storming up above Walled City, and seeking shelter, a family ran into the walls and hid under the concrete in a small exposed area. This was a family of cats. It was a rainy day. With how lush the world is, we know it wasn't the first rain, but it was an especially heavy one. 4 cats in a family took shelter from the rain, all hovering in one big cat pile. They communicated in their adorable cat language. And naturally, Caesar was the leader of her familial pack. But I have to warn you right now that this cat, right here, is going to be a problem. Caesar and her 4 brethren slept together, sheltered from the rain, only to wake up to a butterfly on her ear. This beautiful, peaceful cat had her morning interrupted as this one signaled to go down deeper into the walls. And so the many cats did descend the walls. It was now a bright and sunny morning, and they played around and scratched some stuff. They romped and ran like crazy. But this cat, we should call him Brutus, and he had ambitions. He led the many cats over that pipe I showed you in the lore.
Come on, let's go!
But when Caesar jumped, it broke. Accident? No. You think that was accidental? No. It was all planned. And she cried out for help. Brother, help me! Meow!
Meow.
Caesar briefly awoke. She limped along the trash-littered bottom of the walled city before blacking out again. But then, something strange happened. B12 was still in the city's network, relegated to a tiny portion of the wall and most of the dead city's quarantine area. He couldn't do more than control the lights, a few doors, microphones, and so on. And one of those microphones heard our magnificent Caesar meowing out for help. This shook him back into awareness, so he slid open the doorway leading into the city. Caesar, now awake again, walked into the area and got into the dead city by wandering through a storm gate. She was now standing on the border of the dead city, the first place the pandemic hit. There were no bodies anymore, just barricades and isolation signs plastered everywhere as the only sign people had ever been here. This was where the scientist had once lived. However, with a single meow, a dead city responded as if it were a living thing itself. Caesar continued forward, hurried along by signals from the lights, the camera, and everything. However, still enraged by what had happened with her brother, she began committing petty crimes. First, she stole a bucket.
Dear God. There's more. No.
She used it to vandalize one of the last working air vents in the city. Then, she dumped paint can after paint can down into the alley below. She even destroyed some poor dead child's bunk bed. And like the cool criminal she is, she signed her name into the floor with paint, drank their water, shit in their toilet, and left. Caesar... This is stupid as fucking... Caesar came across one of the last areas the companions lived in before the Zerks invaded. A companion who had hidden in his home during the invasion, but finally had to run to safety, was lying there, seemingly dead, being eaten alive by the Zerks. Caesar scared them off and they ran away, but they bumped the power button on his mask in doing so, and the companion woke up and he cried out to Caesar for help. But this frightened her, and so, as punishment for a jump scare, she struck the off button on his monitor, killing him and adding murder to the list of her crimes. She forged on, eventually finding herself at the spreading edge of the mass of bacteria and Zerk, which had emerged from some unseen sewer opening. The red glow of their mutated eggs trickled like light rays through the broken windows of the buildings, and Caesar sensed danger as hundreds of Zerks slowly began to approach. So she ran. The Zerks detected prey and chased after her, emerging now from every window, storm drain and shop in the city. Caesar managed to weave in between them, and she leapt through a window into safety. In this safe room, B12 communicated to Caesar. He asked if she was okay, and she confirmed. Meow. She continued going forward, across windows, a laundromat, rafters, and so on, until she finally came across the home of a very special scientist. Naturally, she introduced herself by knocking over his neat stack of books and signing her name into the carpet. Then, she graciously typed a message into the keyboard. He should be lucky enough to read it. And the scientist responded by opening the door for her regal self and requesting assistance. Caesar pondered it, wrote a few slurs into the keyboard like a true gamer, and then went into the other room. She connected all the power packs to the console, opening the door into the secret room where the scientist had uploaded himself through a companion into the network. Hopping onto the shelf, she took the drone model and attached it to the device that could connect it to the city's network. The scientist's consciousness began uploading from that network, migrating into the body of that friendly vitamin we know and love, the drone companion, now calling himself B12. He floated up to Caesar to get a better look at her, and this displeased Caesar, so she hit him right in the off switch. Then she changed her mind and she hit him back to life. I know I'm always being a bit sarcastic in the game story part, since I am trying more to entertain than to give you some bland list of events, but I honestly really do like thinking that the companions just have a big fucking off switch on their heads. Like, that is hilarious. And every time you see Caesar bap a companion on the head, or anybody bump a companion's head, they turn on or off as well. So, in classic story and lore fashion, I am bullshitting something which is completely plausible based on what we see in the game. Anyways, B12 came back online. He introduced himself and grabbed some keys. Then he gave Caesar a sweet-ass vest with this upset the mighty Caesar. Meow. Meow, free me! Is this comfortable for you? In this flat, we found the diploma that told us the year that we use to know that it's 2727 right now. But beyond that, there's not much of note here. Caesar and B12 left. They took a bucket across the portion of the dead city, which had been contaminated by the overgrowth. But just before getting into the slums, they find a mural on a wall of some beach, possibly Hawaii. This reminds B12 of his mission. He absolutely must free the people of this city and help them return outside. They take a postcard of the mural, and with their goals clearly defined, they set off past the dead bodies of Zerks mounted on spikes and into the slums. No one knows what this fluffy ball of heavenly might is, or why it seems so visibly ferocious. But naturally, they're all terrified. They shelter initially in their homes, and as Caesar approaches the center of the slums, those who cannot shelter in place run into the armored base of the decommissioned elevators. Guardian slams it shut and brandishes his mighty weapon. Caesar, however, serenades him. This calms him, and he realizes Caesar is as fair as she is powerful. So he signals safety to the others, and the city opens back up. After this, there's a lot of people you can talk to and a lot of things that you can do. But like I said, I'm not giving you the play-by-play for all the achievements. You want to know all of them, just play the game yourself. We're skipping most of it. What's important, though, is that you can talk to Ronan inside the elevator, and they say they're about to turn 374 years old tomorrow on October 12th. Beyond that, the Guardian says the elevator's not operational, but there's a group called the Outsiders who are looking to find a way out. They're all gone now, but there's one of them left. A fella named Momo, who's kind of a shut-in, but you could go up to his flat and talk to him. As a thank you for this advice, Caesar gifts a nuzzle of wisdom to the Guardian, and goes off to meet this Momo person. But, before she can find him, she's distracted by the most wonderful man this world has, or will ever know, and that man is our boy Morusk.
Hello, I'm a musician, but I don't have any songs. Thank you for that music. I will practice.
Now that is some adventure music, and with it playing right now, Caesar dashed up to Momo's house. He was having a full-on mental breakdown. He's completely convinced himself all the other Outsiders, they're dead. They're never coming back, and if he had just stopped them, maybe they'd still be alive. And even worse, he can't even find out who's still alive. The transceiver on the antenna is still broken, and there's no one fast or brave enough to go into the overrun portion of the city to repair it. We leave him to his babbling after he gives us his notebook and says something about the journals left behind by others. And back out in the city, B12 has a thought that maybe we can reignite his passion for freedom by getting him the notebooks from the other Outsiders' homes. The two dash rooftop to rooftop, and first they go to Doc's library. Caesar finds Jess's dead corpse, which really doesn't matter, but what does matter is there's a music sheet just beside her. She also finds a safe, which, when opened, gives us Doc's notebook. It tells of a powerful anti-Zerg weapon he developed. We take all that, hit Baltazar's house for his notebook, and then Clementine's house for her notebook. Clementine's notebook has some useful information for fixing the transceiver, which she figured out before leaving, but didn't give to Momo for comedic reasons. And with all the journals now collected, B12 tells us to go visit Momo again. And of course, that leaves us with one obvious destination, and that's motherfucking Moruska, baby!
I think I can play this. Luck.
This song right here, this one that we found on the piano, it bangs hard, and it energizes our zoomy Caesar to dash up and scare some workers into dropping a can of paint onto the laundromat. Then, still full of energy, she runs down, steals some detergent from the laundromat just because she can. And now, tuckered out, Caesar falls into a small snooze. And after awakening, she goes back up to Momo. Just as predicted, this inspires him to work with us. He finishes the repairs on the transmitter using Clem's design, and then leads us out his back window. All this time, he'd been keeping lookout over the overrun portion of the dead city. Once out there, Caesar tells Momo that she'll be back. She then goes across rooftops for a while. The entire area is proliferated with Zerks, but with Caesar's infinite wisdom and courage, she realizes she can terrify the nearby Zerks by screaming so loudly that they could not possibly tolerate it.
Motherfucker, what are you doing?
After finally getting around or past them, she manages to make her way to the top of the skyscraper that was being constructed when the Zerks broke out among the robots, which we know was done by the robots because of the deterioration of the wood. Finally, at the top of the elevator, she repairs the transmitter. It instantly starts sending and receiving signals, and then she and B12 look out over the doomed city. They talk for a while. Those stars on the ceiling, they are artificial, but they are very beautiful, are they not?
Shut your fucking mouth, motherfucker! I can't hear my own thoughts!
And with that high-level philosophy out of the way, they ride the bucket back down towards the slums. Momo had left by the time they got back, but when he did, he wrote them a note saying they could find him at Jacob's bar. Caesar headed down, but instead of going straight to the bar, she explored a little. She found a shop with a man who was trading a bundle of wires for some laundry detergent, and she just happened to have some laundry detergent. Plus, she had heard rumors that there was a lovely old woman who would make custom clothing out of cords just like the cords we have here. And not one to ignore the drip or high fashion, Caesar took these wires to the old woman and gave her a nuzzle as an offering to get this woman to prepare for Caesar a new and lovely hooded coat. However, this blind old bat made an outfit 5 sizes too large, and Caesar is not dummy thick. In fact, Caesar is taking great care of her health, and if you have cats, you should take care of their health too. Wracked with disappointment, Caesar sadly walked back to the bar. She gave a tragic meow, and he instantly understood. He cheered her up by showing her messages in the working computer terminal. They were from Baltazar, so he was still alive! That shocked Momo and told Caesar and B12 that there is a pathway from the slums through the sewers up to Midtown. But the path was completely overrun with Zerks, making it nearly impossible for Caesar or Momo to get to the Outsiders without a weapon. And so, they made their decision. They have to find Doc's gun. And Momo was determined. He cried out that if those two are alive, Doc must be alive too, and they'll go find him. But then Doc's conspicuously Irish son had a different take on things.
Oh, Seamus! You'll never get past the swords. We'd infested with desserts. They'll make a quick meal out of you. Everybody, especially you, little one.
And with that harsh warning, he left. But Momo figured there must be a clue about where Doc would have gone in his house. The house where he was raising his profoundly Irish son. So the two went down to his house and tried to get in. Now, Seamus refused, but Caesar never asked for consent. And once there, B12 handed Seamus his father's notebook before he could say a word. This prompted him to say in a disgustingly leprechaunian accent,
Oh, wow. I never knew. There's a secret room here in our flat. But where?
By reading a note and solving some locks, Caesar finds the secret lab Doc was hiding. Inside, they find a broken tracker device. Seamus says there's a fellow named Elliot who fixes stuff like this for fun, and he may be willing to take a crack at fixing the tracker. So Caesar went out and found this Elliot. In the upstairs room of his little shop, though, Mr. Robot was sitting bare-ass naked in his room, and he just looked so pitiful, shivering like that. And Caesar is such a kind soul, so she gave him her awesome knitted wire poncho. After all, she couldn't wear it anyways. Just take it. Take it before I start meowing again. So he does. And with it fixed, we're able to see exactly where Doc's gun is located. So he escorts you and B12 to the edge of the slums, where the Zerks were spotted. But unlike Caesar, Seamus is dummy thick. He'd alert the Zerks to our location, so he has to stay behind. And thus, Caesar makes her way down the dead end. Now luckily, this dead end is a straight shot from one area to the next and then back. And Caesar wind sprints through that straight shot because the Zerks are everywhere. Now technically, she can outrun and easily escape them, but these disgusting crabs no longer fear her mighty meow. And so, she teaches them the meaning of true fear by getting into a vehicle and committing road rage. B12 and Caesar finally find Doc in an armored house at the end of the dead-end stretch. At first, he's terrified, but he quickly comes to trust us when he notices the badge serving as an identification. The two get to talking, and finally, after earning his trust, which happened instantly, he shows us his weapon and explains how it works. With this information, he tasks us to fuse up his generator. The fuse? In. The laser? On. The Zerks? Take that, you foolish little crustaceans. With the Zerks dead, Doc installs his anti-Zerk gun into B12, and we fight our way back into the slums. The father and son duo are reunited, and that means it's finally time to give another song to Marusk!
I'm a great musician now.
Now strapped and no longer lacking, Caesar and B12 get on a raft with Momo. They sail down into the sewers, and after a certain point, when they can't sail any further, they walk. But they don't walk for long before they find that someone has to hold a door open and stay behind while the rest go forward. Momo, this is farewell. Thank you for your service, and goodbye. Caesar navigates deeper into the sewer. After a while, the walls stop being of brick and plaster, and they become of bacterial flesh. It's getting wetter and grosser, until finally the walls themselves started looking at Caesar. They are now walking straight into the mutated core of Neko's various experiments. And now enraged, it sends hundreds, no thousands of Zerks after her. B12 desperately tries to fight them off with the ultraviolet flashlight, and Caesar hisses, preparing herself for the mightiest meow of all. But then, when he was needed most, B12's power supply overheated, and he blacked out. Caesar grabbed him with her mouth and ran through the sewers. A tidal wave of Zerk followed, but with B12 disconnected from his body, he was able to somewhat influence the network again without having to upload his brain into it, and he managed to close the door just in time. Wait, no, one got in. Caesar didn't need B12 to handle that one. She managed to wake B12 at this point by bapping his on and off button twice, resetting him. With B12 back alive and all the Zerks dead or trapped behind them, the two wandered freely into Ant Village. It's a fun place, and Caesar is a fun and wholesome creature who helped this lovely woman by getting her all the colors of flowers she could want, earning yet another beautiful, beautiful badge. But she's done too many good deeds lately, and Caesar is trying to stay chaotic neutral. So, she also ruined these fools' mahjong game. Oh, look, it's Balthazar.
Hey, I'm trying to meditate here.
What? But I just wanted to...
Go find Clementine. She's up there in the Midtown.
And so, after being rudely shooed away from those ungrateful Ant Village hippies, Caesar climbs all the way up and into Midtown.
Oi!
The police here are ever present, ever watching,
Oi!
and they're after Clementine above all else. Caesar, however, despite her long list of crimes, has a very innocent-looking face, so she walks about, finding some neat badges, meeting this cool dude right here.
I'm busy, what do you want?
Oh, I'm sorry, he sucks. And getting to take a nap right on top of this even cooler dude right here. After meeting a bunch of people and on a tip from a group of beatboxers, Caesar goes up and gets into the home Clementine is squatting in. She jumps him and says in a conspicuously unfeminine accent,
Huh, so you're my new recruit. You're small. You're so cute. Listen, there's an atomic battery we need. Go steal it for me and we can escape. Be careful about the police. A few weeks ago, someone made them British, and then they've been beating innocent people ever since.
Caesar goes back and meets with Blazer. After thieving some clothes for him,
These are great. A little snug around the waistline, but it'll do.
he helps her into the factory, and she's able to steal the atomic battery. She rides back in a bucket, while a cop bot shouts out in the distance.
Oi!
Back at Clementine's apartment, the police have set up a barricade, but Caesar is able to sneak by and get in, jumping through a window just in the nick of time. Now, Clem isn't there anymore, but she left a coded message saying to find her at the nightclub where she's hiding with Blazer. Caesar manages to sneak in through the back window into this nightclub, and once in, she finds this music. This is repulsive, so Caesar scratches their record, lowers their lights, and hurries to Clementine's location. Once she gets there, she sees Clementine tied up with Blazer. Why do you sound like that?
Two birds with one stone. You're not as clever as you look, little cat. Anyway, nothing personal. Business is business. Business is money. And I value money way more than friendship or and I value money way more than friendship or camaraderie. They are all yours.
Oi! 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 Oi!
Even B12 can't translate this shit, but without a warning, they just zap us, and when we're awake, we are in prison. Of course, this cage wasn't meant to house the incarnation of a chaos god herself, and so Caesar breaks free in mere moments and dashes across the prison. She finally comes across Clementine, who's indecipherably yelling something.
Help me!
What does this mean? Only B12 could say. But through a high-level game of charades, we find a key, and we use that to save Clem's life. The two of them make their way to B12's confinement cage, and Caesar easily sneaks past the guards. After resetting her little vitamin, B12 is back online.
Hey, nice work, Whiskers.
Thanks, man voice. With the police executing one of their own, Caesar is easily able to seal the cages so they are unable to get back out into the yard. Then, Caesar finds some car keys, and Clementine gets it started.
Oi! That better be my Lincoln Big Ben Charles Green Crumpet Mobile I'm hearing.
Just like that, the three rode out in style. They were home free. They escaped the prison, Henry Stickmin style, only to be ambushed on the other end by the police.
I guess this is it for me. Go on ahead. Only one of us needs to escape to bring back the sky, Whiskers.
Oi, oi!
Good luck.
Oi!
Rest in peace, Clementine. I'm assuming you're dead. Rest in peace. Once having used the atomic battery to power on the train leading to the control room, the two of them sat in mournful silence until they finally arrived. And there they were. The control room. They had arrived to the cleanest and most well-maintained area of the whole city. It's not been touched by any of what happened in the rest of this place. It's still looping the same advertisements to attract humans that it was back before the plague broke out beyond the walls. And, as this is a critical part of the city's infrastructure, the companion robots aren't connected to the network, and thus, they weren't able to receive sentience. B12 is still unable to break into the control room, but with the help of Caesar clawing through some wires, the security door finally fails and they're able to get in. Once inside, and on B12's instructions, the two figure out a plan to hijack the control room, but they don't have much time. The police are on their way, and there's a similar upload terminal here as to what there was in the scientist's room. And even with all the computers activated, it's sealed with a series of 3 locks. And so, B12 gives Caesar one last request. Caesar, my friend, destroy everything. It took not even minutes for all the security locks to be disabled. However, destroying the code in them significantly damages B12's companion body. He connects to the console, and he apologizes. He knew he would never have survived this mission. Connecting to the network will destroy the companion in the process either way, and his drone companion body is already damaged from disabling the security system. His consciousness will likely die before getting into the network, and the most he can do is disable the lockdown procedure and bring back the sky. And this is exactly what he does. You were my best friend, the very best I could have asked for. Thank you. Caesar wakes up beside the body of B12. She doesn't bother bapping his on-off switch anymore. She knows it's useless to try to bring him back. With the sky now open and the walls of Wick 99 no longer sealed, Caesar can wander freely out into the wilderness. She may not have the family she once had, she may never see them again, but she's now known a friendship and brotherhood the rest of us could only hope to one day dream of. She sniffs the air of freedom before glancing back one last time. There's a vast world out there for our wandering hero to see, and while she misses her friend dearly, she still sets off to see what she can find. but she won't be alone for long. I did it! Hello, you may have noticed my outfit changed. That's because it is now 5:20 in the morning. I started editing this at 7 o'clock in the morning. Do the math on how long I've been sitting here. It's been a very, very long day, but I'm very glad that I was able to finish it. Not in time, not even close to in time, actually. My initial day that I wanted this done by was Wednesday. It's Sunday, my dudes. My bad. Yeah, there were a lot of, issues that happened when making this. Doesn't matter. I'm not gonna ramble on this time like I did with the SCORN video forever. There's just a couple of things I want to make sure that I say. The first one is, and I was actually gonna say this in the middle of the video as like an intermission, but I couldn't find a way to work it in naturally. We are now at like 1,500 subscribers. Let me just double check that. 1,700 subscribers. Cool. That's changed. It's kind of overwhelming. In the last week, I've gotten more than double the number of subscribers that I had over my entire channel's lifetime, and that is. I was talking to a friend of mine about this. It's really exciting, but it's also it's really rather terrifying, kind of. Things that didn't matter before suddenly do as well. Like, before, I would start on a video and be like, I'm gonna try to have it done by Saturday. If it was done by 2 weeks later on a Thursday, nobody gave a damn. Now it's like, I'm gonna have it done by a Friday. And then if I don't, I have comments and they're like, hey, you fucking promised. And I know that's not the intent behind those sorts of comments. It's just, I have never had, people checking for. Very exciting and very different, and I'm very much too tired to really explain all the nuances to that. But if you're new here and you just joined, welcome. I guess you enjoyed the videos that I made, and I hope that you enjoy the videos that I make in the future. I also want to quickly thank all of the voice actors who helped me out with this project. There was Mr. I Don't Know, Gildorphin, Not Sarah, and Goose VR. I would highly recommend checking all of them out. Some of them are just on Twitch, some of them are just on YouTube. If you have accounts on either or both, please give them some support, give them some love, because they did not need to do this for me. They could have just said no and moved on with their day, but they took the time out of it to voice act for this video project that's going up on my channel that I'm benefiting most from. And they definitely deserve some sort of props for that as well. I also want to thank Blue Lobster. He voiced some lines. We had a gag that's in the outtakes of, like, one of the cops was Irish because of some technical glitch, and then they catch him. But it wound up being a bit too silly, and it was a bit too difficult to implement, so I wound up just having to remove that just for the sake of the video. He doesn't have a YouTube channel, but if you watch that little outtake and you think it was funny, then tell him in the comments, because he'll probably look at them just like I do. Also, I just realized, I never said this, but please do subscribe to me and comment and stuff. I wouldn't have made this video if so many people didn't suddenly start interacting with the SCORN video. In fact, I've been working on a new, kind of much bigger scale project with an animator, and a couple of the people who voice acted in this video will probably be voice acting in it. And I didn't have the time to work on a video that takes as long as the story and lore videos take to make without some good excuse to do it, like a lot of people being there to watch it. So literally, if y'all weren't leaving those comments and liking the video, and whoever it was that shared it and made the damn thing blow up, if that didn't happen, then this video wouldn't exist. So, really, thanks to all of you, and give yourself a pat on the back for that. Yeah, honestly, that's all I can think of. Thank you again, and yeah, good night.
Like, she sounds like it. She's just gonna be like, oh my god, you're so cute, and then she's just gonna go,
Dude, okay, that's the line. You just did it.
okay, good.
That was so fucking funny. I would throw them for such a loop. You know those, like, kidnapper on the phone calls? You sound like the parody of that, is what I mean.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't do that. Do not ever do that.
When's the next time the Queen's gonna be driving in a vehicle?
Oi, oi. Everybody knows the bloody Queen died. Now hold on just a minute. My 13 years of experience being called Nigel are telling me something just ain't right. In my right hand, I have a bowl of Lucky Charms, and in my left hand, I have 15 pounds of spotted dick. Which hand do you want?
I don't think I can answer that very easily, my friend.
Why are you turning Indian?
I don't know. The confusion is getting to me.